A new terror stalks the darkness. Her appearance strikes me as more intense than the others, after but a glimpse of her haggard silhouette. Twisted and torn in unspeakable ways, with grayish dead skin stretched out over an emaciated body. Her arm is a horrid, overgrown deformity, capable of slashing through both flesh and bone alike. Her very presence speaks of endless torture, similar to mine. I wonder, did she refuse the entity's calling until broken? Or did she wish for this? Fate should not be tempted, nor should it be played with. There are powers in this world that must not be trifled with, for when you gamble with blood money, then the devil will take his due. Welcome, my friends, back to the Fog, a realm of evil and fear dictated by the whims of a mad god with devious designs that defy logic and empathy. A place where terrified survivors and victims flee and die in an endless cycle of despair against vicious and cold murderers and monsters with no remorse for their prey. Some killers who stalk the dark did not become what they are by choice, nor is it ever something they asked for. Some of these killers are individuals who saw no other course, no other way, and in the end, the weight of their suffering broke them. For the hag, this was her fate, and her damnation. Lisa Sherwood, as she used to be known, had grown up hearing the tall tales and legends her grandmother would tell her. She kept books with seals, spells, and symbols in them, some to bring luck and fortune, some to curse and harm. But Lisa never believed these stories or that there was any power in these symbols. She just liked doodling them on her arms or books to bring her luck. And they did. They brought her luck. She even gave a symbol to her friend Pam, who found that, indeed, the symbols that Lisa drew did bring luck somehow. But Pam wasn't satisfied. She needed another. She began finding symbols herself, digging through Lisa's books, and began using glyphs and symbols to increase her luck in more than just her science class, but also her English class. Lisa began to fear what Pam was doing. It was clear that the symbols weren't just superstition, and Lisa's grandmother had warned her not to play with powerful tools like these without thought or care. When the English teacher Pam had passed away mysteriously, Pam was not nearly as sad as Lisa was, and Lisa was becoming more annoyed and fearful of Pam. At the funeral, Pam mocked her large and overweight teacher as the pallbearers struggled to carry his coffin. Just as she gave another mocking laugh about the weight of the coffin and the weight of the teacher inside it, the pallbearers finally lost control, and they dropped the massive wooden box right on top of Pam. And as she was crushed to death under the weight of her own mockery, her hand revealed another fresh symbol painted on it.
Hey.
Pam had again played with a power that she had not appreciated, and mocked a man who had died because of it. Now the devil would have his due. Changed by the event, Lisa would go on to understand the true weight and power of these symbols, and dare never to use them again, for any reason. But years later, while walking home through the woods, she was kidnapped by cannibals. She was dragged to a lonely boat shack in the woods, where other victims were chained to the walls, their bodies mutilated and cut up by the kidnappers. The swampy air wasn't good for their lacerations or injuries, causing them to fester into pus and boils, and allowing flies to feed on. And she was to join them. Countless days passed as she was cut up and carved like a beast, treated like an animal. Desperate for freedom, desperate for release, she finally yanked her decaying and rotten hand free of its shackle while she was alone. and using it, she performed the last thing she could, her last act of defiance. She used what remained of her bloody, gnarled finger and drew symbols into the ground. Symbols of vengeance, of anger, of pain. And the devil would have his due. The kidnappers' bodies were found, their flesh torn to pieces by what appeared to be a wild animal, and there was no sign of Lisa Sherwood anywhere. But there was now a haunting power that infested the swampy grounds, and the village Lisa hailed from would never be the same again. Now, one of the things I like about the hag's backstory is that there is an irony to it all. The voodoo or traditional practices that Lisa practices carried a huge price, and we see that play out in the lore story of what happened to Pam. And I did like the comeuppance at the end for Pam, as it was a good way of demonstrating that all things have a price, but at the same time, I felt it was a weak story too. And what I mean is this. What if, instead of Pam being the stupid kid who played with these powers, what if it was Lisa instead? Think about it. Lisa kept using more and more symbols because they seemed to be helping. Pam is the one who starts warning her that this might be a bad idea, and then when Lisa ignores her and makes her another symbol, Pam is the one who suffers. Like, think about it. So, Lisa tests out the symbol not thinking anything will happen. She gets good luck, likes it, shows it to Pam. Pam doesn't believe it, gives her a symbol. Pam gets good luck, but then someone dies as a result, and Pam doesn't trust the symbol anymore and says she doesn't want to use them anymore. Lisa isn't convinced. Lisa's saying, nah, these are great, and I'll find more. So she starts finding more and more and more from her grandmother's library, using them more and more to get more things she wants. And then it's because of her overusing it that Pam dies. Seeing someone she cares about die as a result of this would be a stronger reason for her to stop using it. And not only that, but it would also explain how she learned more symbols and more angry and more dangerous symbols that she would use later when she's kidnapped by cannibals. I think that would make a lot more sense and make it a little bit more dark. I think the reason they didn't do that is they wanted to make Lisa look more innocent. They wanted to say, oh, the poor innocent girl became the monster. And while that's true, I feel like, we could have had this a bit darker. I feel like that could have been done a little bit better. It's clear the symbols are what's causing the death. I feel like if Lisa was inadvertently causing them herself, it would have been a little bit stronger. It would have explained a lot more. That's just the way I look at it. It would also give a bit of catharsis, as since she swore never to use the symbols again after what happened to Pam out of fear of hurting others, that's when she's pushed to her limit by the cannibals. She decides to break her oath because she wants to hurt these people. She's ready to give up her humanity to get back at someone now. The innocent girl who learned a horrible lesson in the past is now ready to turn that on its head and use her power to get back at others. I feel like that would have worked better for what it was. It was still serviceable. I also feel like the hag behaves more like a wild animal instead of a rational human, and I like that. It implies that she sacrificed her humanity for vengeance, and that the entity is more than willing to accept her now that she's a broken shell. I think that's just more fitting, wouldn't you think? But maybe I'm just speculating. Now, for her playability, the hag was never my favorite. Not that she's bad by any means, but I never got into her that much. The hag's ability is Blackened Catalyst, or Phantasm Trap. The hag can drop to 10 symbols on the ground. Each one is a hidden trap. When a survivor comes close to this trap, a phantasm or clone of the hag will burst out of the ground with a loud scream, notifying the hag. This doppelganger hag will not hurt or chase the survivors, but it will rotate to constantly stare at them no matter where they run to. This is because if the hag is within 40 meters of said trap, she can teleport to it and take its place, thus always looking in the direction of the survivor that the clone was, allows her to begin a chase while staring at them. Now, the symbols can be dealt with by survivors by either flashlighting them, flashbanging them, or dropping firecrackers on them to deactivate them. And if you crouch walk over them, it will not activate. However, survivors do have to look hard to find them, as they can be well hidden, especially in grass. Most hag tacticians like to put the symbols near hooks or gens so as to be an easy way to pop up and teleport to a rescuing survivor or survivor working on the gens. This is a nifty power to make the whole map basically a trap mine territory. Unfortunately, I've just never been lucky with them. Most players I go up against somehow know how to evade all my traps with ease, and worse yet, there are times where I'll enter the chase and someone will just deliberately run through all my traps so that they're deactivated later after the chase is concluded and I have to reset them all up again. Ugh! Very annoying. Now, as for the hag's perks, she has 3 hex perks. What are hex perks? We've talked about them previously, but let's go over them briefly here. Throughout the trial, there are totems that look like skulls held up on sticks. They're usually in hidden locations. Now, most of them are harmless, and deactivating them or breaking them really doesn't do anything for you. But hex perks turn one of these totems into an active hex totem that gives the killer a power so long as it's active. The Hag's perks are 3 very interesting ones. She has Hex the Third Seal, Hex Ruin, and Hex Devour Hope. Now, Hex the Third Seal might be a reference to the third seal in the book of Revelation, in which it reads, Revelation 6, 5-6, "And when he opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, 'Come and see.' And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand," or scales. "And I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 beasts say, 'A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and see thou hurt not the oil and the wine.'" Now, this seal is in reference to the third horseman of the apocalypse, famine. However, the hex's power doesn't seem in any way connected to that. While this hex is active, the last 4 survivors, if the perk is maxed out, who are hit with basic or special attacks will suffer from blindness and be unable to see auras. I suppose the best way to connect this to Revelation is that John, the writer, is being forced to see what is to come, and this perk removes the ability to see. I don't know, a kind of weak tie-in, but whatever. Still, decent perk. Keeping the survivors unable to find each other or their objectives is a nice way to keep them off balance, so I don't mind that too much. Now, Hex Ruin is probably the most popular of the Hag's perks. While this totem is active, all generators not being worked on will automatically start regressing themselves back to their broken state. However, once a survivor dies by any means, the totem is immediately cleansed. This perk is the definition of annoying, because as long as the Hag maintains pressure, she can force survivors to abandon gens and only make it harder and harder to finish the trial. I had one match where one person just sacrificed themselves to do away with this totem altogether. And if you really want to make it hard, combine Hex Ruin with something like Tinker. Oh, that'll be hell on earth for you. Now, Hex Devour Hope, I believe is getting a rework soon. I understand that, but I would still like to talk about what it was on release and how strong it is now so that you kind of recognize where it used to be. And maybe in a later video, I'll talk about what it became. Now, while this hex is active, again, old version, while this hex is active, every time a survivor is saved from a hook while you're within 24 meters of that hook, this hex gains a token. At 2 tokens, you gain the haste status effect after hooking a survivor. At 3 tokens, all survivors become exposed and can be down on a single hit. And at 5 tokens, the Hag can kill all survivors by her hand. Like I said, this hex is getting changed soon, but I still wanted to go over this while it was a thing. All the Hag's perks require hex totems. And honestly, I feel there's a good side of that and a bad side of that. On the good side of that, these powers are really good. Ruin is one of the most famous and most annoying perks in the game, and Devour Hope has been a very popular one since it was released. So the Hag has some really good perks. The problem is they're easily removed. I've started many a match as the Hag where all of my perks, like within 2 minutes of the match, are gone. Like I'm going, oh man, well now I'm out of luck. It really, really sucks. I hate when that happens. So that means that the Hag can potentially be the most dangerous thing you confront in Dead by Daylight. But on the other hand, if your team is good at finding hex totems, it means, oh crap, now I'm a weakling. Now, does that mean that the Hag is fun for me to play? No, I don't enjoy the Hag as much as others, but I actually do like her lore. And like I said, I think if a few things were tweaked, like change the Otis onto Lisa instead of Pam, I think that would have made the totem strong, the tome thing stronger. That would have made her extra backstory stronger. And as for her choosing to sign the sigils of hate and anger, which sold her soul to the entity but made her a vicious killer to get back at the cannibals, that was a really cool touch. Way better than the survivor that came out with her, Ace Visconti, who I talked about in my previous video, who I hated. But more than anything, what I really like about the Hag here is kind of the underlying message to it. It's kind of the same with Ace Visconti in a way, the gambling aspect. With Ace, his whole thing was gambling. You take a risk, and sometimes you win big, sometimes you lose big. But with the Hag, I feel that's done a lot better. The Hag played with something that she had no idea about. Lisa Sherwood was very unfamiliar with the ways of these symbols, these totems, these things that she was drawing. She underestimated what they were. And then when the chips were down, she had to make a gamble. Does she throw all of her hope in the fact that these symbols might save her life? Might get back at these guys? Might get her home? Or do they destroy her and everything? She played a gamble, and she lost. And now she's little more than a wild animal running around in the entity's realm. A very dark, very unfortunate ending for the hag. And that's all I have for this episode. And I look forward to seeing you next time in the fog. Take care.